Good morning. Welcome back to He's House, where we do a little bit of everything all the time, and it usually turns out right. Today we're going to make that prime rib risotto I've been talking about, but first I'm going to have a little bit of breakfast because it's early. And then after that, it's our last little holiday festivities for the Christmas break. After this, it's just time to relax for the rest of the break. I got some great ingredients out here today. We got mushrooms, onions, poblano pepper, garlic, tomatoes, celery. And then of course we got that smoked prime rib. It's gonna be a delicious morning. So follow along and I hope I can keep you entertained and keep your bellies full. Now it's time for me to enjoy my breakfast. And you may be wondering why I'm making some breakfast sausage for my kids and Bodie's just standing there. He already was fed, but this dog has a refined palate and he's like, why are you giving me kibble? Do you eat just kibble, Bodie? What? He does not eat just kibble. So, Bodie gets all our leftover meat juices. So this is some broth we made the other day. We didn't finish it up, but Bodie's gonna finish it up. It's got a lot of fat in it actually with Bodie likes. And so we mix it on his kibble for him, and he really enjoys it. But this dog, he won't even try his kibble until you put some meat on there for him. Right, Bubbles? Yeah, good Bubbles. Alright, well I'm gonna go get him fed now. Alright, got the breakfast ready for the kids. It's time to get started on the risotto. I'm using this cast iron pan here. It's got an enamel coating and it makes the best risotto. Like, it's just good for sauteing anything. I have this bigger pot next to it. I may have to switch out because the risotto really grows. So once I get to that point, I may have to switch pots, but I'm starting in this one. And a little trick, if your cutting boards like mine slide around a lot, this is a damp towel, not wet, but it's damp. Put your cutting board on top, solid as can be now. And this is the bones from the prime rib I made. I'm going to show this to you real quick. That on top is just fat that came out of the bone. So I'm actually going to pull that out. Try to get the broth off of it. But that is what I'm going to use to saute up my vegetables. It just adds such an extra depth of flavor. Bodie's probably disappointed because a lot of times Bodie gets that melted onto his kibble. And what did I say? As soon as the fat started melting down, Bodie came in asking for food. But he already got fed. Set this to the side. Now we start chopping. I'm going to use a whole onion. I'm going to cut it nice and small. Liz says she doesn't like onions, but that's not true. She just doesn't like onions that aren't properly cooked. So I'm going to dice these small. I'm going to saute them until they start to make that pan blacken, a little bit of bits on the bottom. The onion gets a little caramelized. Then at that point, I'll add the mushrooms. Turn this down a little bit. And I know we still don't have smell-o-vision. I think they promised us that back in future TV time. But if you could smell this right now, you'd be pretty happy. Now I'm just going to keep stirring this for, this is probably actually going to take about 15 minutes or so. bit more. And then while that's going on, we're gonna get everything else chopped up. So I don't use the stems often. If I'm making like a beef stroganoff, something where I'm gonna be cooking them a little bit more maybe, or where it doesn't matter, I'll use them. They tend to be a little tougher, and I don't want any tough bits in this. Somebody gets a tough piece of mushroom stem, they might think it's my roast beef, and that roast beef is tender as can be. I also don't typically wash my mushrooms. I just brush them off. If they're older, or they have a little too much dirt on them, I might. Typically mushrooms come in pretty clean. So I just brush what's on them off. And then my chickens eat all the stems and give it back to me as eggs. For this, I leave the mushrooms a little bit bigger. If I was putting these on pizza, I'd have them cut pretty thin. And if you were going to do this without the prime rib and just have the mushroom, like a good mushroom risotto, I'd leave them even a little bit bigger, because then they'd be more like the main meat per se inside of it. But since we are having some prime rib inside of it, I'm just cutting them a nice size. And I'm going to saute these really well. So these are going to break down almost all the way. Whereas if you were using them as instead of prime rib, you wouldn't want to saute them all the way, because you want them to have a little bit of bite to them still, a little bit of meat sort of. So this is a poblano pepper. They're typically not that spicy. Yeah, this one has a tiny bit of heat, but not a lot. It'll add a nice flavor without kicking the heat up too much for Liz. And I'm going to cut these up nice and small as well. I want all of the vegetables to be smaller than the prime rib. Turn it down just a little bit. I don't typically stir my onions a lot, but I do want them to be cooked on all sides, and there's a lot of onions in there right now. So not all of them are on the base of the pan. And I'm just cutting the tomatoes in half. They're going to go in towards the very end, just so they get softened up a little bit. Man, tomatoes add some great flavor. This is actually a lot. I might not put all of these in. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, I think I'm just going to fill up this bowl here, and then we'll save the rest for something else. Oops. Just lost my tomatoes. Last thing I need is a kid running through here, stepping on a tomato and just squirting that everywhere. We're starting to get some caramelization on the onions, so I'm going to add the mushrooms now. We're going to cook these mushrooms for quite a while, and so the onion's going to continue to keep cooking. So I don't want the onions finished before I put the mushrooms in. And I don't know if you can see Bodie there or not, but he has been sitting here by the pan the whole time since I put the beef fat in there and started cooking it. So I'm going to put the peppers in at the same time, but before I do, I'm going to put the garlic and celery in. I like to cook the celery a little bit more than the peppers. Man, the celery smells good. Hey, kiddo. All right, I've got 11 cloves of garlic here. I'll probably use all of them. I'm using 3 cups of risotto. Although, let's see, we're gonna have about 15 people here. So I may do 4 cups of risotto. That's why I got the bigger pot out. This pan can hold max 3 cups of risotto. And at that point, it's still a little bit full. It's really a 2-cup pan. But yeah, I pulled a couple extra out. Some of these are bad, so I'll probably... Oh man, this is brand new garlic too. That one's gone. There's a farm near us that grows their own garlic, and it is delicious. I think it's the elephant garlic. It's just big, but it's very tasty. And I don't know what it is with these strains that you buy in the store. Maybe it's just because they're meant to grow super fast and make a lot of garlic, but they don't last very long. And like I said, this is brand new garlic. But that stuff I get from that farmer, that stuff, I don't think it goes bad. You just keep it on the counter, and that one's bad too. I'm gonna have to break out another thing of garlic and see if it's okay. Mushroom down. Probably gonna have to get some beef tallow out of the fridge. Those mushrooms are really soaking everything up. Now I really want this garlic smashed pretty good, because I want this garlic flavor to go throughout it. Probably gonna smash it again once I dice it up. Gonna shoot garlic all over the kitchen. Now when you're doing that, make sure you don't hit the sharp part of the knife. Not time yet. It did turn out to be a lot of garlic, huh? Well, it's probably good. Garlic keeps away mosquitoes and vampires, right? It's wintertime, so we don't have any mosquitoes, but it is dark a lot, so you never know if the vampires are going to show up. Have probably about 10-15 more minutes on these mushrooms. You don't want to do it too fast because I don't want to burn anything, but I want these to be rendered down so they're almost like the onions. This is rosemary from the aquaponics. I have some catfish in there right now still. I keep saying I'm going to shut it down for the winter, just put the catfish in the pond, but this rosemary just keeps growing. So I'm going to leave the catfish in there until the rosemary stops growing. Although there's probably enough nutrients in it right now where the rosemary is going to be fine. Actually, I forgot about this. I meant to put this in the pan first. This is some beef fat. So yeah, this is the beef fat I cut off the smoked prime ribs. I'm actually going to put it in here on low, and instead of adding more butter, I'm going to put this fat in here. Now this is going to take a little bit of time. I might have to get some of my smoked tallow out of the fridge, but we'll see how it goes. And you have to do it nice and slow. You can't heat this up and try to get it out fast. It won't work. I'm actually going to add a little bit of water to it. This will help heat it up quicker. The water is going to evaporate. And then once the water evaporates, all you're left with is the fat. Alright, Bubbles. You got to give him something. He's been sitting there so patiently. You ready? You want another one? There you go. He's the one that keeps me company 90% of the time in the kitchen. Everybody else is usually always doing stuff. So my channel's not sponsored or anything like that. I don't get any revenue from the ads. But the other day Liz was watching one of the videos and Woolies brand, which makes wool clothing, popped up as one of the commercials on my feed. Probably most likely because it's in my search history. And Liz got super excited. She thought Woolies had sponsored me, which they're not. But she probably wears 99% of her clothes are wool. She makes a lot of wool clothing for Heath and for the other boys. And so she was super excited. But good news is Woolies likes my content apparently because they ran a commercial on it. So we'll see how that goes. Any of you like to sew and like wool, cashmere, let me know. Maybe I can get her on here showing you how to make clothing. She goes a lot of times to Goodwill, Salvation Army, and she'll look for old wool shirts, wool sweaters, cashmere, anything like that. And she turns them into clothing for smaller kids. She makes some for our nieces and nephews. It's pretty adorable. She makes hats out of it, shirts, pants, shorts, you name it, she makes it. So if you want to see that, let me know. Maybe we can convince Liz to show you all how to do that. The mushrooms and onions are now where we want them to be. So I'm going to add the celery and the garlic. And this we don't want to cook too long because we definitely don't want the garlic to get burned at all. We just want to soften it up a little bit with this celery. So maybe like 2-3 minutes here, and then we'll add all the peppers in. The fat yet hasn't rendered down enough. Still needs more time. The water's almost gone. The fat's starting to come out. So instead of getting tallow out of the fridge, I'm going to add some butter here because I'm going to add butter to this eventually anyways. So I'm going to add it right now. It's about 1.5 tablespoons, I guess. Now that we've softened up the celery and garlic, I'm going to add the peppers in. This we're going to do for probably 5-7 minutes. Like I said, I don't have this up very high because I don't want to burn anything. I just want to get everything sauteed a little bit. And really with risotto, nothing is fast. Risotto takes a long time to make, especially once you start adding that broth into it. You don't want to do it too fast, otherwise it doesn't soak into the risotto as well. While the peppers are sauteing, I'm going to start cutting up some of this meat. Some of this is thinly sliced. I'm not putting that in there. I'm going to save that for sandwiches. But I left some big chunks. Yeah, that's all thin. No, sorry, Bubbles, you don't get any of this. And I saved the end pieces. I cut the end pieces a little bit thicker on the prime rib, and I use those for this risotto. Gives it a little bit more flavor because it already has some of the seasoning on it and a lot more of the smokiness. Now I just have to dig through and find all my end pieces. I'm actually going to combine all these into one now. Chunks, slices for sandwiches, another end piece, and more chunks. That is going to make delicious leftovers right there. All right, buddy. No, you get into this piece. Ready? Boop. And you missed it. On the ground. Look, right there. There you go. So when you're cutting the meat up, Bodie's actually going to get a little bit here. I left some fat on here, so I'm going to take this off. Just a little bit of gristle. When you're cutting the meat up, you want it to be bite-sized. You don't want it to be too small where you can't find the meat, but you also don't want to be too big where they might need a fork. Most of the time, when I serve any foods, it's all prepared, so you don't need a knife at all. Everything's cut up, so it's all bite-sized. Even when I serve steak, I usually cut the steak up first before serving it. Just makes it easier. This is Bodie's favorite part of life right here. And he's like a bottomless pit. You see how skinny he is? This dog eats so much food, and good food. He gets his kibble, he gets good meats, good fats, good broths. But he's pretty active, and he's 8 years old. He's been that size ever since he's been 2. Hasn't changed, but maybe a pound or 2 the whole time. And dropped another one. He's never been able to catch food very well. Sometimes he does it. So when I'm cutting up meat for meals, I go through, and any piece that might be a bit of gristle or anything, I take out. When you're eating a meal, at least for me, the last thing I want is to bite into some delicious meat and then hit a piece of gristle and be like, ugh. Do I pull this out of my mouth in front of everybody? Do I just keep chewing and gag it down? Nah. I get all that out before it's plated. Ooh, I'm going to actually save that for a snack for myself. That looks delicious. Alright, the vegetables are almost ready. Seriously, I wish y'all could smell this. I don't know if you could hear that, but as I was cutting, you heard it cut through something gristly. So I'm going to pull that out. Oh my God. Did that go down the vent, Bodie? This dog, he just jumped up to grab it, bounced off his nose, went down the air of it. So I'm going to have to get that in a second. bristle. And this meat, it's all gonna go in at the very end after I get everything pretty much good to go. And all I'm gonna do is warm it up slowly in the risotto because I do not want this to cook at all. It is a beautiful color right now. It is nice and tender, and I want it to stay that way. So I'm going to show you these vegetables since you can't smell it. Little sizzle, that's what you're looking for right there. I mean, that was a whole bowl of mushrooms, and there's nothing left of them really. Oh man, it smells so good. Alright, this fat's starting to render down. Needs a little bit more. I'll put that in at the very end a little bit. I need a little snack myself. So now I'm going to add a little bit of wine to the pan. It's probably about a cup. And I'm going to scrape the bottom. This cast iron pan, one of the reasons I like it, it is awesome at getting that crust, the little blackened bits on the bottom of your pan, whatever you call it. But because it's enameled, it comes right up. Now I'm going to add the rosemary in. I'm not going to add the salt quite yet, but I am going to add a little bit of pepper. That was probably about maybe half a teaspoon of pepper. There's not a lot, especially because this is going to fill this whole pan up by the time I'm done. It's actually going to fill this one up. I have decided to go with 4 cups of rice, which means it won't fit in this pan. We're going to start in this pan with the rice just to get it covered with the oil and just cook it for about a minute or two. Once we start adding the broth, we're going to switch it over to this pan. So that wine is pretty much been reduced now. Yeah, there's basically no more liquid left except for the tallow and the butter. Alright, so now I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit. Once it starts really sizzling, I'm going to put the rice in. So this pan is sort of thick. It's not quite thick enough, which is why I don't really like using it as much. These thick pans, so much better for dispersing the heat out for a dish like this. Alright. Now this is just going to take about a minute. We're going to mix all the rice in over some high heat. We're going to get it coated with this oil. And as you can see, with 4 cups, this pan's almost full. Once this absorbs all the water, I just need to get a bigger enamel pan. That's all I need to do. I'm going to need the rubber mitt for this. This pan's heavy, and I got to scrape all this out. Don't want to leave any rice or seasoning behind. Actually, I'm going to throw the broth in here just to get any extra bits of seasoning out of it. And we need 12 cups in total. This first one is going to be 4 cups because we got 4 cups of rice. So this part takes a while. You do not want to rush this. You want to make sure all the moisture, pretty much all the moisture, has absorbed into the rice before you put any more water in, broth in. And you can tell that, like when you see how I'm doing right now, when you do this, right now it's full of water. But once this rice starts absorbing the water, you do this and it'll be like a thick cream coming behind the rice. That's when you know it's time to put more in. So we'll check back in about 15 minutes. I think I hear Liz in the middle stirring upstairs, so I'm gonna make some coffee for them. Liz prefers a latte, the boys prefer a vanilla steamer. So I'm gonna see if I can get them up and out, ready to go for the day. All right, just wanted to so you can see what this looks like. It's almost there. Actually, it was almost there when I started the, yeah, see how there's a little bit of moisture still? I just gotta stir this a little bit more around. That leaves a nice streak behind me that doesn't fill in with moisture. So that's good to go. Now I'm ready to go. Now I'm only putting 2 cups in at a time now, so I don't want too much in there at once. Problem with this is now I have to remember. So now we're at 6 cups, and I need 12 total. So now just keep stirring this. You don't want to let it sit for more than a minute or two, because you don't want anything to stick to the bottom. And we're back to the sourdough baguettes. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 450. Risotto's almost done, about half the liquid's in. And going to see if we can time these up so they're both done at the same time. All right, coffees are almost ready. Add a little bit of heavy cream, because heavy cream makes everything better. And then the boys, they like their vanilla. They like a lot of vanilla. Put some steamed milk to top it off. Hot. And we're ready to start the day. I'm about to add the last 4 cups of broth, so I'm going to add the tomatoes at this point. Stir those in. They'll be softened up a little bit, but without getting overcooked. Let's make sure this is 4. And a little bit left for Bodie. That worked out perfectly. So about 10 more minutes, we'll add the meat and we'll be ready to eat. So we have the last of our broth in. It's almost where it needs to be, absorbing the moisture. So now I'm going to put the meat in. And stir this around. This is actually going to lower the temperature of everything. And it'll slowly heat the meat up. It'll keep it nice and tender. It won't be overcooked. And while there's still some juice in there, I'm going to add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, which isn't a ton. This is probably going to need more salt for most people. I tend to undersalt my foods because I like it that way. And it's pretty easy to add salt on your own dish than to take salt out of the main one. Yep, we're almost there. Probably about 5 more minutes and dinner will be served. So as it happens, I was planning on having this whole video done by 11 o'clock. And it probably would have been. But then people started showing up early, so it wasn't. I had to close everything down and set it up. We had, let's see here, 13 adults and a bunch of kids, I don't know. But it went great. Everybody was around the island. We ate here the whole time. Drank a little bit of wine, had some bubbly water, and enjoyed a great post-Christmas get-together. So, I did leave some left over for you guys, though. The bread turned out great. Everybody loved it. I had to hide it. I told them there was no more left. Let's cut into one of these for y'all. So that's what the baguette turned out to look like. Number 3, he eats so much bread. I think he ate 2 baguettes just by himself. I left it in the oven so it would stay warm. Gotta have that butter melted into it. A little bit of salt. All the butter in my house is unsalted because if I need salt, I just add it myself. The risotto, this was completely full a little bit ago. It's almost completely empty now. And it was delicious. So here we go. Fresh risotto with a sourdough baguette. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll put the recipe in the comments for both of these. And I look forward to seeing you on my island again. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Smoked prime rib risotto with sourdough baguettes. Everybody enjoyed it today. I hope you guys enjoyed it at home. Thanks for stopping into He's house, where the food is always fresh and the back deck is always open. Let me get you a little zoomed in picture here. So thanks for stopping in, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and a great new year. And here's to 2025, and I hope you all have a wonderful 2025. See you around.